Hey there, folks! Welcome to Walt's Manga Update for the date of April 23rd, 2012. Another week of chapters, and another week where a series has ended. Not cancelled this time like Stars, no. Bakuman has ended its run. After 4 years, we finally end with chapter 176, but we'll get to that in a moment, so sit right back. We've got a whole week of chapters to talk about. Yeah, let's get through this. Oh, and monthly chapters this week, so yippee! Bakuman, chapter 176, the final chapter, Dreams and Reality. So, Mashiro decides to wait outside Azuki's house for the end of the Reverse Eye anime in a Ferrari, of all things, because his uncle has always said he always wanted to impress the chick by having a really nice, flashy sports car, and so he's going to do it the way his uncle always wanted to do it, which is, just, he wanted to have a really nice car, and he wanted to do it in a place that was important to both of them. So, after the anime ends, Mashiro calls up Azuki, tells her that he's outside, and that way they can go, and they go to her old house where they first made the promise. And so, Mashiro, after a bit of nervousness, finally confesses his love, asks her to marry him, and the manga ends with Azuki saying that they can always be by each other's side. I like the ending, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, the romance got a little BS near the end, I'll admit, but this last chapter really was nice. So one thing that Mashiro brought up is that basically every time that they've been together was Azuki was on his right side, always by his side, and so that was kind of why the Ferrari was important. Let's see, what else can I bring up? Well, not much else, really. I mean, I've talked about everything else in the last few chapters. I guess the last thing I can say is, overall, there was a decent end to what I believe to be was a great manga. And, yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a shame. I thought I'd have more to say at the very end, but really, this was a very simple end. Everything else had been done, so they just got this last little bit out of the way. The romance is finished. They can finally get married. And the manga finally has its close. Naruto, chapter 583. Who is this? So, the chapter begins with the orphanage mother and Kabuto actually performing healing ninjutsu on some wounded Leaf Village ninja who happened to be there. And then Danzo shows up, and I gotta give the author credit for this. I gotta give, what's his name? Mashimoto, I think it was? I'm not sure, I'm gonna have to look that up later, but Mashimoto has written the greatest Deus Ex douchebag character to ever exist. If you need something done, if you need some character dragged into a world of darkness and hate, get Danzo on the phone, tell him it's to protect the leaf, he'll do it in a fucking heartbeat. It's amazing. So Danzo shows up at the orphanage, and it turns out the mother happened to be an old ninja who's given up her ways. However, Danzo's like, yo, we need your skills, you don't do this, your orphanage is gonna get fucked in the ass hard by us. And everyone's like, how can you do this? It is the least we can do to protect the leaf. Fuck you, Danzo. Fuck you. Oh, and of course, he decides, we're taking one of your kids anyway. We know we said we weren't going to if you did this mission, but yeah, we kind of need one, so fuck it. Dick! So Kabuto, of course, is the one who goes since he wants to protect everyone else. And I gotta admit, there's a really damn good page of just Kabuto growing up throughout the years and him wearing different headbands of different villages. Just really showing that he's never really had a good grasp on his identity because he's always swapping around. He always needs a new name, a new identity, a new headband. It was always very interesting to see. And so, finally, he gets surrounded by the enemy while on a mission, and he attacks one of them who tries to kill him, and it turns out it was the mother from the orphanage, and trying to heal her, he realizes she doesn't recognize him at all. And so finally he just has to run off and leave her there for dead. Unsure who he even is and what he wants to do anymore, Orochimaru pops up out of the water he's looking into, ready to make him his evil servant or whatever. I gotta admit, I can't believe I'm saying this after I went on my fucking Naruto rant last week, but I really fucking liked this chapter. It was not as bad as I was expecting. I love how it just shows Kabuto growing up. I love how Danzo is just the ultimate Deus Ex douchebag. That has to be a word now. Deus Ex douchebag. Just, whenever you need something bad to happen, this character comes in and does it. I wonder if I had to. I wonder if I could pick out the Deus Ex douchebags of all the other series. But anyway, so overall, this was not a bad chapter. Not at all. And, dare I say, I might just get my hopes up for next week. I don't know, Naruto's kind of screwed me a few too many times for me to really say I'm surely getting my hopes up, but maybe a tad. One Piece, Chapter 664, Master Caesar Clown. It's time for One Piece Exposition Chapters! You all know the chapter outside of flashbacks, outside of battle explanation, outside of twist endings, that one chapter where all we do is have people talk and just explain what the fuck is going on. How'd this island get this way? Who the hell's Master Caesar Clown? Why the hell does Tashigi not pimp slap Smoker for smoking in her body? Well, that last one's never explained. Though I imagine Oda is building up to a joke at the end of this arc where Tashigi's going to have nicotine withdrawal syndromes. That's not going to be funny, but I kind of think that's the only way that can be going. Of course, we could just play it off like a cartoon and she'll have no adverse effects because she suddenly started smoking for no other reason, but it's someone else in her body. But anyway, so, explain this chapter. We understand that Punk Hazard was in fact quarantined long before the fight between Aoki and Aokiji. I hope I pronounced those names right. And that's because Master Caesar Clown set off a giant gas bomb that basically rendered the whole island useless. And before that, Dr. Vegapunk and Caesar Clown worked together to create weapons by experimenting on humans. You know, the Navy used to sound like a really noble and just cause. They used to sound like such good guys. And now, I don't know, now that we've got Aoki basically running the whole show, and Smoker's group basically torturing pirates, and then you got the whole human experimentation. I mean, Kuma was one thing. Kuma volunteered. And if you have a volunteer, hey, go for it. That's what I'm saying. If someone volunteers like, yo, turn my body into a weapon, that's their decision. You've got the know-how to do it, so you're just going to do it. When you're taking prisoners and just experimenting on them for the sake of advancing science, that's stepping into Dr. Insano territory right there. Your good guys should never step into Dr. Insano territory. And yes, I do view the Marines as the good guys of this, and I'll talk about that on a later date, but... So, we get explanation that the pirates were left behind when the island was quarantined and all the Marines left, and they lost the ability to use their legs, and basically Caesar Clown gained the support of all the pirates by giving them devices that allowed them to move even without their legs, and then Law just came in and started working for Caesar Clown, doing even more for the pirates by giving them the legs of animals instead. And of course we learned that Brownbeard's entire crew was basically wiped out and he washed ashore on the island, all from, as you remember, there was one page where Brownbeard showed up on an island and he encountered Basil Hawken, who I can only assume just kicked his bloody ass. But that's basically the big explanation we get, and how if they don't stop him, there's basically going to be this huge catastrophe going to happen once again. Oh, and also, one thing I almost forgot to mention this. One thing was, at the beginning of the chapter, I'm sorry, there's a dog barking outside, and it's one of those annoying little dogs that, you know, has the little high-pitched yelp. I don't know if you can hear it, but it drives me nuts. Anyway, one thing about this, there basically were reports of children being kidnapped throughout the years. However, they weren't sure if it was actually the Marines doing it or not, so they labeled it as them being killed out as pirate attacks. That kind of ties in with the whole good guys are kind of stepping into Dr. Insano territory now, doesn't it? Anyway, overall, exposition chapter. Was there a better way to get this information across? Maybe, but I can't think of a better way other than Brownbeard basically explaining the whole thing. So, overall, I did like this chapter. I liked how, basically, we make out Caesar Clown as this mass murder genocide master, and how basically Luffy's gonna have to punch this guy to death to get off the island now. That's awesome. So, yeah, I like this chapter. I did. Bleach, chapter 489, March of the Star-Cross. So nothing happened. I want to say something happened, but really, you think about it, nothing happened. Basically, three nothings happened. First, Ichigo and the guy who beat those three dudes in one hit, the captain guy, they engage in battle. The leader of the Vanderreich, as they're called, I actually learned their name this week, he basically says, okay, Ichigo's here, fuck the 5 days, we're going now, we're kicking Soul Society's ass. And Commander, we find out that all the missing people from the villages from earlier, they actually were killed off by the science guy who was trying to balance out the souls of the missing hollows. Because as you know, when a Quincy kills a hollow, he doesn't purify it, he just kind of, well, makes it go away forever. And that causes a disturbance in souls. And so, basically when the commander asks, why'd you do this? Considering the gravity of the situation, you would have obtained permission. And this is paraphrasing, but the dude basically answers, why? Because fuck you, that's why. It's your fault this is happening, because you didn't kill the leader 1,000 years ago. And now, basically, that was building up to some flashback that's gonna happen later. You know, you can say this is the final arc all you want. It's still going to be 2 or 3 years before this is done. We've got so many characters that are going to get fights, I'm sure. Unless Ichigo fights all the villains. Which actually would almost be really fucking funny if Ichigo just, one after another, it was a fight scene with the villains. And every round, someone's arm gets chopped off. That should be how Bleach ends. Just... Everyone chops off their arms in unity, and they're like, well, fuck, we don't have any arms to fight with. I will kick you to death! Yeah! Overall, nothing happened. So I can't say I didn't like the chapter, I can't say I liked the chapter. I can't say anything about nothing. Reborn, chapter 382, The Power of the Vindice. So, with Vindice's clothes being ripped off, they congratulate the team for being, just momentarily, more powerful than any human being. Which basically tempts Reborn to ask the question, so does that mean you are no longer human? And of course, some very foreshadowy dialogue is exchanged, where we find out a few things. One, Vindice are basically a bunch of fucking zombies, or they look like zombies. 2, they have stone pacifiers, which, if I had to take an assumption on who they are, I think I'm gonna have to guess that because the Akelobano, the baby curse, basically only lasts an eternity. After that eternity is up, or, well, wait a minute, eternity is forever. So, like, is there a set time limit? Or maybe when more worthy people are born, I think is the better way to put it. So, basically, when their time is up, when someone more worthy is born, the pacifier turns to stone, and they basically... This happens, if I had to guess. Like, I'm just kind of guessing based off of knowledge of the story. And I'm even sure that I may be completely wrong. But anyway, so Vindice basically says, no, we are stronger now, and they prove it by kicking everyone's ass. Like, easily. However, with only one theory left to test, and that is of combining 2 illusionists' power together to create one superpowered attack, Chrome walks onto the battlefield, resolve in her eye, as Reborn states, "She's my representative." Overall, this was a really good chapter, and I'm serious. I love Reborn, and it's because of chapters like these, because one thing Reborn does really well is set up a villain. I mean, originally, there was no villain to this story. The villain was basically all the heroes and villains we had met previously, and I already thought that was a really good idea. I would have loved to see this just be a regular tournament arc, but now we've got such an interesting and mysterious villain set up, basically already set up since the beginning of the story, since the Mukuro arc, back before we even hit chapter 100 of this series, as being the strongest in the Mafia world, now proving to be even stronger than was once thought. And now basically, I just really want to see how the fuck this plays out. That's the best way to put it. Fairy Tail, chapter 280, Kagura versus Yukino. So, we have two characters who we've yet to be introduced to of two rival guilds. Two guilds that didn't exist 7 years before. Basically, Kagura, a swordswoman of the Mermaid Healed Guild, and Yukino, a mage of the Sabertooth Guild, both going up against each other. Now, basically, the only way you can make this chapter good is if you have a good fight scene. You establish, and not only that, you basically are introducing two characters, and you're giving them a whole chapter, so really, you need to establish the basics of their emotions. The basic of their personality, almost, is... Actually, that's a better way of putting it. The basis of their personality. Fairy Tail does this. I gotta give it that. Fairy Tail does this. First we have Kagura, a very stolic swordswoman. She's very powerful. She's been known to help Mermaid Heal win in times of crisis. And then we got Yukino, it's her first time at these tournaments. And something very interesting, she is a celestial wizard. Basically, she can use the keys like Lucy can. And not only that, which this makes her awesome in my book. Apparently there were rumors, Lucy mentions, of a 13th key that goes along with the 12 golden keys of the Zodiac. And she has that key. She has 3 golden keys. All the keys that Lucy doesn't have, she has. Which always brought up in my mind, are there multiples of the golden keys? And I can only assume now that there aren't. That this is pretty much, we know of every golden key now. All of them either belong to Lucy or Yukino, and I think that's really interesting. And also I think that opens the door for more, like, a different colored key set to be introduced later on. And I would really like to see what comes out of that. Like, maybe we get a whole arc of dark celestial wizards who use, like, the dark keys. And so we get a whole arc where Lucy ends up having her final fight with someone. I don't know, I'm just, like, speculating, but I would love to see that. And so, we basically do have a story between two very powerful wizards, or really, a battle between two very powerful wizards. The story's only one chapter. And they basically go at it, and you think that Yukino's gonna win it first, because I think anyone who reads this chapter who's a fan of Fairy Tail can think, Yukino's gonna win this. She's going to win this. And then Kagura kind of pulls hacks by using some swords magic where she doesn't have to pull out her sword to use it, and cuts the 13th spirit into pieces. Wow, that's brutal. That's really fucking brutal. I gotta imagine that the spirit she has, I gotta think that they're like Lucy's spirits, that, you know, they can talk, they have their own personalities. And Chick just cut that snake into pieces. Ow! Anyway, Kagura ends up beating Yukino, basically proving that Sabertooth is not flawless, and not just in the way that all Dragon Slayers are bad to transportation. And overall, this was actually a really good chapter, and I'm amazed I had this much to say about a Fairy Tail chapter, especially when it's a chapter about a fight between two characters that we just met this chapter. But I'm amazed. It was a really good chapter. Kenichi, chapter 471, Master and Disciple. So, we all think it's the end for Akira, but in fact, he counters this horribly advanced Sillet move with a very basic karate move that actually Kenichi was learning himself about 100 chapters prior. So, we then get a flashback to his disciple, Kanasho, basically learning Sillet under this guy, and basically Janaze kind of says something about, oh, that's right, your disciple kicked the bucket, haha. And then the most awesome thing that could have happened in this fight happens. Akira gets pissed off at that, yes. But here's the thing about him being pissed off, and I love this. I really wish a lot of characters had this about them, because you see some characters who get pissed off, they're all of a sudden going fucking berserk, and yet the hero still can't beat them, even though they're just doing whatever they can to basically kill the guy, and their stance should be wide open. They should be able to land a straight up attack and kick the guy's ass. Here's the difference between those guys and Akira. He's calm, he's collect, he's thinking of how to beat you, but at the same time he's thinking about everything he's going to do with your skull once he rips it from your face. This man has the most calm and cold-hearted anger to him that is amazing. I love that. I love that the anger he gets, the calmer and cold-hearted he gets as well. That is an oxymoron that shouldn't even exist, and yet the fact that it does is what's awesome. So yeah, I love this chapter. This has been a great week so far. I love this chapter. 2 new chapters of Hayate, the Combat Butler, chapter 359 and 360. Each of these are both one-shot chapters. The first one, 359, is all about Nishizawa trying to figure out what she's going to do in life and how she's going to make a ton of money for when her and Hayate get married and Hayate keeps screwing up. I love that she just immediately thinks Hayate's dumb enough to go to co-sign stuff and basically ruin them in debt. Like it's his fault he's in this situation in the first place. But anyway, so what I really like about this chapter was the ending, in that basically she's talking to Nagi about how to become rich and how she has no real talents. And so they get talking about Nagi's manga, and she actually helps Nagi come up with an idea for her manga. And so the chapter ends with a quote from Walt Disney, and I'm going to read it to you. I am in no sense of a word a great artist, nor not even a great animator. I have always had men working for me whose skills are greater than my own. I am an idea man. I really like that, and I gotta admit, just thinking on the whole chapter, it was really funny. And then we have chapter 360, this one focusing on Hinagiku, who overhears the ghost priest laughing at a gag manga at night and assumes that the house is haunted, which she's absolutely right. And so basically, something about Hayate's character I've noticed since it returned from a break back in, I think it was the end of February, early March. Hayate has gotten bitter. He has gotten just a cold, sharp tongue to him now. And honestly, it works to his advantage. Okay, so, like, if you look at Hayate from when the series was first started, if something bad happened, he would look at you, he'd smile like, one of the best examples is when a crow is attacking a baby bird when he first meets Hinagiku, and he throws a stone with perfect accuracy to get between the baby bird and the crow, and he just looks at the crow with the kindest smiling face, and it's like, I recommend not harming that baby bird, or the next one will hit. And he doesn't break from his smile, and the crow is scared out of his mind. And so, like, I like Hayate like that, but this one kind of feels like this is his life, he's used to it, and the bullshit has kind of gotten to him. Like, in a sense, he's content with his life, but he's also he kind of gets that he got screwed over a lot, and that he's a little bitter over it, and every now and again, if something bad happens because someone else is a douchebag, like, the perfect example was, in a more recent chapter, he has to take an exam, but he got a cold. I think this was 352, unless I'm wrong, where he gets a cold, and all these distractions occur, and then as he finally walks into class to take the exam, he sits down, the teacher's, basically, her game console slips out of her hand, flies across the room, hits Hayate in the face. Now, the Hayate from earlier in the series would have just put it back on her desk and just did the exam. In the actual chapter, he snapped the thing in two. It's obvious he has become a more bitter character, and personally, I think he's better for it. I think it really kind of adds something new to the gags. Like, rather than Hayate going with these crazy premises, he kind of just realizes, my life has become a running gag, hasn't it? Oh, dear. And I really do like that about the series now, and I'm amazed I had this much to say about Hayate, but basically the chapter ends with him basically tricking Hinagiku to go back to sleep, and of course one of the other girls living in the house finding him over her body as he's about to pick her up, and the series ends on one of the greatest quotes from it. "It's not what you think!" Both chapters were awesome in their own way. I really did like these two chapters. Beelzebub, chapter 153, Chief. You know, I'm starting to think that maybe I was looking at this arc the wrong way. I mean, this is an arc coming straight off of a big arc. A fight between a demon school. And of course, like I said, one of the things that kind of bugged me about that arc was that we didn't get to see any of the supporting characters do anything. This chapter, this arc really is kind of rectifying that piece by piece, and I think this is kind of supposed to be leading up to another arc. Now, you see, the reason I've probably been looking at a bad light is, and I'll stand by this, I don't find the first few chapters of this arc, which is supposed to be funny, I don't find them funny. I don't think many of the jokes work in this. Well, at least English-wise. Like, I just recently saw an anime review, two of them, that talk about how jokes don't really translate that well between cultures. Some of them don't, and, like, a lot of jokes for Japan are, like, they like sex jokes, perverts, they find that kind of stuff funny. Yeah, I find that funny every now and again. If an entire manga is built off of that, it's gonna get boring sooner or later. And so, I think that's one of the reasons why Beelzebub can never really be up there with my favorite mangas. But I still do enjoy it because, A, I do find a lot of jokes funny. Like, I remember one joke that I found hilarious was, the way of beating, of this demon was basically you had to play a Sudoku puzzle. And not only Oga, but Tojo, who just walks into the room ready to kick some ass, they both look at this and decide, we're doomed. We're going to die here. That was funny as hell. But anyway, so I should talk about the chapter. So, first off, basically, last chapter, Hajime and Tojo find out that his little niece and one of the girls from their school got kidnapped by the other school. And, Himewaka, I believe his name was. Oh, here we are. It's written here. Himekawa. I'm sorry, I got the last two mixed up. I apologize. Basically shows up ready to kick some ass with them. And in fact, he has a new stun baton that acts as a whip that he can just whirl around, hit people, and it'll shock them with volts of electricity. I gotta admit, that's pretty fucking awesome. That is a great weapon. I almost think Dino from Reborn should be swinging something like that around. It's awesome. But anyway, so, what else happens this chapter? Well, basically, Aiba, the leader of this school, after all the times his men have been beaten up, he finally can no longer take it, and so he calls everyone out to say, I'm going to challenge the chief of your school. Now, which one is it? And it turns out the one it is the guy he's been hanging out with this whole time, Oga. And so they prepare to fight, and finally, Oga just charges at him with demon-like speed, well, because he's got demon powers, and just throws a punch at this guy, which I can't remember. Did he avoid it, or did he take it and just say, like, good punch? Let me look it up real quick. It'll only take me, like, 2 seconds. Oh, he dodges it. Okay. Yeah, I cheated. I looked it up. Shut up. I looked it up. And so now, we basically get this one-on-one fight between Oga once again and this new guy, Iba, who has been hinted at having demon powers. So, who knows? Maybe this is going to turn into something interesting. Overall, not a bad chapter. This series knows how to do action when it wants to, and it definitely has a lot of fun with its asshole characters. Because there is a scene in this chapter where Himikawa, that was it. Himikawa is basically hanging the leader of these delinquents over the side, and he's like, if you're going to threaten someone with this, you gotta make sure to follow, and he just drops it at follow. He just drops him right off a building after he had been hanging Hajime's niece overboard, saying that he's gonna drop him. That, I gotta admit, that was also funny. That was really funny. So yeah, overall, this was a good chapter, better than I found the last few to be, so who knows, maybe this will turn out to be a good end of the arc. Toriko, chapter 184, Shoryuken Temple Training. This arc is fucking awesome. So, Komatsu and Toriko are training in food honor, and they're doing all these crazy intense stuff like learning the perfect bowing maneuver, or they'll be basically pierced to death by a cactus. They have to pick out eggs among rice that if you break one, the shockwave of it breaking will break all the others. They have to, of course, they had to do that thing again, get the beans with a 5-meter thing. And of course, Toriko finds this to be horribly dull. He who has trained all his life in the way of punch many things, become stronger. And so, in frustration, he throws out a straight-up knife attack by mistake that cuts a building in two from a distance. And that is the power of food honor. The pure concentration in that one attack brought about by food honor has made it significantly more powerful in a short amount of time. And not only that, what I loved about this chapter as well was the pufferfish, an early on ingredient. Basically, pufferfish have a poison sac in them that if you don't handle them right, the poison sac will basically ruin the entire fish and kill it, and you won't be able to eat it without dying. Komatsu is able to not only get the poison sac out with no trouble, he did it while the pufferfish still thinks it hasn't been cut open. And thus we get to perhaps the best part of this manga. There was an image of a fish with just a head, a tail, and a skeleton, no meat or muscles, swimming, and the assistant master said, there have been accounts of chefs who have handled fish so skillfully that they have continued to swim around for years without noticing that they've died. You know, I believe that. I would absolutely believe that if the fucking chef was Law. My God, that was a fucking humorous picture. And so the chapter ends with Kin, basically saying that yes, they're making progress, but this will be the last thing he does in his human life, and so he better fill his stomach. Which, I think that means exactly what it means. He's old, he may be dying soon. He may just have such a sense to him that he feels he's going to die soon. And so, yeah, the training Toriko and Komatsu is the last thing he's going to do. But overall, I think this is going to be the best training arc of, in terms of power growth. I think this may end up being the best chapter, the best training arc in Toriko ever. Like, even with all the compatible foods he's eaten, even with the number of times his cells have grown because he's eaten delicious food. This right here, learning food honor, I'm going to call it right now, is going to be the best training arc in terms of power growth. The World Godly Knows, chapter 186, FF, which stands for Fortissimo, which defined, that means very loud, which really, I think that's the best way to describe this chapter. So, with Haku still fighting Vintage and Vintage planning to kill each girl one by one if they need to find the goddess, Yumi and Kima finally meet up on the ship. And Kima gives up. That's his exact words. I give up. And he says, I'll answer any question you have on one condition. You can only ask one question now. Every other question will be answered truthfully at a later point in time. And so the one question she asks is, do you love me? And he says, no, I do not love you. And that proceeds to get him slapped around a bit. And of course, I think the best part of this chapter is when Ayumi says, you're the worst, who will ever like you? He comes up with the best answer for his character, and I love it. This was great writing on the author's part. He says, I'm not doing this to be liked. I'm doing this for the ending. That is the love of a gamer. Yumi, I adore you. Join me, come with me, to the ending. And as he says that, I don't know if it's just because of something he did or Nora did beforehand, or maybe it's the goddess in Ayumi, but the whole boat starts to glow. However, there's one more thing in this chapter. Apparently Terry, no, it's not Terry, it's Tenri, because that's not a second R, that's an N. Tenri reveals something to Diana about Kima, and apparently it's a big shock to Diana, so that's something I hope we get to hear about next time. And before I end this, there's one other thing I need to talk about. The talk with Chihiro and Ayumi, you know when Chihiro revealed that she knew what was up, she revealed that to Kima it's a game, there was a second side to that. She did reveal it. However, she revealed it while defending his actions, which really makes that a weird cliffhanger now for that chapter. So I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying it's weird about her expression. Like, if you just did it with a normal expression, it still would have been as shocking, I do believe. But now it just seems like really weird. Like, why did she seem so pissed off at that moment? And then just decides to go into defensive mode for Kima. It's weird. But overall, this manga is really good. And I hope that this reaches a conclusion that's worthy of such a great arc so far. Except for that bullshit where Yumi forgot about what Kima did to Chihiro. That still bugs me. That is a plot hole. That's still a plot hole. Gantz number 361, Battle Cry. So, what happens this chapter? Well, the defenses that the aliens have up kind of blow up a significant portion of the battle droids, I guess is the best way to list them. And they continue to destroy the battle droids. Meanwhile, the big men in suits that we know nothing about, that are apparently pulling the strings on this, say they're going to self-destruct. They're going to self-destruct enough suits when they get close enough to basically destroy the whole thing. However, a bunch of aliens charge in and nuke them before they can nuke them. Did that make sense? Let me repeat that. The aliens nuke the guys in suits before the guys in suits can nuke the aliens. There, I hope that made sense to you all. So, yeah, all the Earth's defenses just kind of went boom. I don't think this series is going to have a happy ending. Do you? Because I don't think so. Anyway, it was an alright chapter. As always, the artwork is impressive. Soul Eater 97, The Battle for the Moon, Part 7. Oh god, do you see what the problem is with this series naming things? God. So, actually, what happened in this chapter can be summed up very quickly. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is Stein and Justin's battle finished last chapter with Justin Law. Yeah, his name's Justin. Law. Law being destroyed and saying that Stein is just going to take his place. However, Stein comes back with saying that the fact he lived without comrades and just obeyed the rules all the time is the reason he gave in to madness. He let his imagination die, and really, that was the only... Apparently, imagination protects you from madness? What? I thought imagination caused madness, and Law had no friends. Fuck it. And so Stein says he wouldn't want to live in a world like that. So as long as he has his friends by his side, he won't go mad. So there you go. So Shinigami has to call in Kid and asks... I'm sorry, I lost my ability to talk real quick. Okay, so the Shinigami calls in Kid to ask him to come back to Earth while everyone else stays to fight on the moon because he has been in negotiation with the witches hoping to get them to join their fight against the Kishin. However, the only way they'll agree to it is if Shinigami comes to finish off the negotiations. Basically, they want to put a soul protection around the Kishin using all the witches' magic. So they're basically going to get every witch together to put a protection around his soul that will keep the clowns from regenerating. So, sadly, Kid has to leave the battlefield. However, the Death Scythes all agree that they will stay and fight for as long as Kid needs. That being said, Maka decides that everyone's going to go their separate ways as her and Soul head to the moon to join the battle. And everyone else kind of does their thing, finding Corona and all that other good stuff. Overall, this was a good chapter. I think the biggest thing that happened this chapter, really the one thing you gotta look into, is kind of Stein's answer to the whole he's going to become like Law because he exists in madness like him. And basically his response was, I have my friends and family, so I know I won't end up like you. Even though, for the past couple chapters, he kind of slowly has been ending up like him, but I guess really you have to think that's sort of like the Kishin's control, and as this chapter goes on, that insanity that he had been using kind of disappears, even when he ditches, Mary, the Death Scythe. I think her name's Mary, I'm totally spacing, and I think it's Mary. Basically, she's the only one keeping him sane, but even after she leaves and he joins back up with Maka's father, he doesn't really experience anything like madness, which makes me think, so is the madness of the Kishin kind of like a drug? If you're exposed to it long enough, you'll just get used to it and it won't affect you as much? Or it's kind of weird, really. It raises a few questions. But overall, the chapter was decent, and I hope that they do allude to this a bit more as time goes on. This being a monthly series, obviously, you probably won't get answers to this kind of stuff for years down the road, so you decide to start a monthly series, you better be ready for the long haul. Kimi ni Todoke, Chapter 67. I should not talk about this series, even though I'm going to. And I'll tell you why, because after reading this chapter, I asked a friend of mine who both turned me on to this series, and he knows more about this series than I will ever know. And so, after reading this chapter and getting my own impression of it, I simply have one question I want to ask him. Is Ayane a lesbian? And now I'm not making a joke here. I need to say that. I'm not making a joke. I'm being completely dead serious here. Is she a lesbian? Does she prefer the company of women over men? And this is not a joke. This is something serious. This is a serious romance series, and that's why I'm taking this seriously. Because honestly, based on this chapter and the way her character has been throughout the story, I feel that's the way the author's going to take her. Because, okay, so what happens this chapter is, of course, basically Kent, one of the characters, has always been kind of hitting on Ayane. Just, he really likes her and he wants to kind of, hook up with her. The thing is, though, Ayane kind of avoids him, and today we finally get a real explanation why, and that she's kind of worried to get caught up in love. She's worried about she says to Sawada during a walk home that when Sawada asked her when she liked Moji, how long she liked him for, she didn't know how to answer that because she really didn't like him. She didn't really like him that way, but they were still going out. And basically, I always feel that Ayane is basically the characterization of, you know, one of those girls who will hook up with one guy in high school one week and then be with another guy by the next week, just because either one of two reasons. One, she just likes to be with a different guy every time. Like, you know, she's one of those women that one guy's just not enough, which I don't feel is Ayane's character at all. Or two, she's just trying to find the right one, which I feel is closer to Ayane's character, but still not quite there. So, really, I'm so bad at this. I am really fucking bad at this. So, I'll be completely honest. I'm not making a joke of this. I really thought that throughout this chapter, Ayane was just going to look in Sawada's eyes and then all of a sudden, without being able to hold back anymore, just kiss her. I really thought that was coming. And, I mean, the story wouldn't be any worse for taking a direction like that, having Ayane prefer women over men. It's just, it feels like it's foreshadowing that. It really does. And, of course, I asked my friend this, and he just flat out said, no. Which, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with you. I really do think that this is the direction that this manga is going in. I guess that's my review of the chapter. I enjoy the series. I enjoy this good romance. I just can't talk about it. Because it actually involves thinking. To Love Rude Darkness, Chapter 18.5, The Changing Heart, Honest Feelings. So I think I've explained this before, but To Love Rude Darkness, along with its normal 40-page chapter, will sometimes also put out an extra 20-page chapter, which I think is awesome. So, what happened this chapter? Well, this chapter, basically Nana, one of the two alien twins, sister to Lala, happens to walk into Rito's room. I apologize. We are officially getting into mature topics, folks, and I'm a fucking 5-year-old in immaturity. She walks into Rito's room and asks if he only likes women with big breasts, because sadly, she is lacking many cups lower than her sister. And so, basically, Nana's just getting a little sexual with Rito, until it finds out that actually Nana and Momo used the device used in the previous chapter to switch bodies. So really, it was Momo, the more sexually active of the two sisters, who was confronting Rito. This chapter was really funny. Mainly at the end, of course. Other than that, it was very interesting. And this did allow a little look into basically Nana's character, how even though she really hates Rito, she of course still kind of wants to be liked by him, which really I didn't think we had that stereotype enough in this story. I mean, we already had how many characters like that? One. I think there's a second one. No way. Yami just wants to kill him. So yeah, I guess that makes 2 of that character. God, this manga is such a fucking stereotype manga when it wants to be. It really is. But the writing is really good, and so that's why I keep reading. Good writing can take even the greatest of stereotypes as far as you can imagine. So overall, I really did enjoy this chapter. Addicted to Curry, Chapter 95. So this is it, folks. The big battle of the curry shop. On its last day, both chefs are going to make one dish, and people are going to vote on what is the best. And you can definitely see that Yu's father does not want to get back into curry making. He just wants to make something simple, something that'll just finish out the contest quick. And everyone immediately sees through it, considering that they're always watching Makito give it his all whenever he makes any dish. So when they see lackluster cooking, they know lackluster cooking. So he dons his gloves. Everything goes according to plan. And apparently the motherfucker can strike onions with lightning with his knife. Because, I'm serious, that was the greatest part of this chapter. Dude, it looks like the guy struck lightning to the onions. That was hilarious. So they both cook a curry dish. Makito cooks a dish that appeals to every one of his favorite customers' sense of taste. Something that everyone can eat. A vegetarian one, a non-spicy one, a really spicy one. All different kinds of curry. And Yui's father makes a very simple chicken curry. Something very simple to it. And everyone votes, and next chapter we'll hear the results. Don't you just hate that? Overall, this was a better chapter than usual. This whole arc has been very good, something very enjoyable, and I look forward to the conclusion. And that's it for Walt's Manga Update this week. Thank you all for joining us. You can, of course, catch this every week at Monday, so feel free to subscribe up there. Also got Walt Reviews, a new review coming out this week. Hopefully, I think I made that promise last week, but this week it's coming out for sure. I'm getting it done this week, because I've been lazy about it. But anyway, so, excuse me. Thank you all for watching, and keep on reading.